everyone, we're going to get started. Let's get started. Welcome. For those of you who don't know, my name is Larry Gilhini. I'm Northeast Hub Director for America's Future. AF's mission is to empower young people to be active, civil, curious citizens who build freer communities that lead to fulfillment, dignity, and happiness for all. We're proud to be working tonight with our partners at the Black and Hispanic Caucus and our friends on the panel at Blexit and Respective Inc. For being on the panel. Thank you. So now the big issue that we're here to talk about tonight is going to be rising crime in NYC. Can I get a show of hands? Who here has been the victim of a crime? A few people for our live stream audience. We certainly have some, but you know we all see it. We see the homeless. We see all the things that are happening in New York. So it's not surprising to see that there's been some victims of crime here. So without further ado, let's turn it over to our panelists so they can do introductions for themselves. So first up.
Yeah, so starting off, my name is Sam. I am the Northeast Regional Hub Coordinator for America's Future, and I'm out of Rhode Island, actually.
My name is Madeline Brame. I am the State Director of Blexit, New York. I am the chairwoman of Victims' Rights Reform Council. I'm also the mother of a homicide victim.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for attending this event. My name is Argelio Rodriguez, and I'm chairman of the Hispanic Caucus for the New York Young Republicans Club. Professionally, I'm a business and employment lawyer, and I work mainly with restaurants, bars, and nightclubs here in New York City. And I'll pass it on.
Good evening. My name is Alpheus Marcus. I'm a community advocate here in New York City. I help a lot of families that's been affected by violent crimes. I also help families involved with NYCHA issues as well as holding a lot of these elected officials accountable. I've been a candidate for both state assembly as well as city council, and I'm happy to be here tonight.
Happy to have you.
Good evening. My name is Jude Sumfun. I am the chairman of the Black Caucus of the New York Young Republican Club. I'm also the chair of philanthropy, and I'm also the city coordinator, one of the city coordinators for Blexit, New York. Yeah, that's it.
Big round of applause for our panel. Come on, guys. Come on. Let's see some energy out there. Okay, to get some ground rules squared away for our panelists, this is going to be informal. So panelists, it's okay to interrupt, say if you have something important and want to follow up on something that somebody else is saying. Just got to pass the mic back and forth for our live stream audience at home. Glad to have them here. First round is going to be 10 questions, and I want you to each hold it to 1 minute each, okay? So this is going to take some time. So try, the quicker the better, right? So 1 minute maximum. I've got my watch going. I'm going to be timing. All right. So we're going to just go down the row, and each of you can answer the question. So question one, what is the state of crime in New York City? Are things getting better? Are they getting worse? We're 3 years post-pandemic. The world, it just seems like we're slipping back further and further. Homelessness is everywhere. What crimes do you see happening, and what are the state of things?
Sure. I'll start off. So as many of you know, New York passed cashless bail in 2019. It took effect early 2020. Since then, things have changed dramatically, and so we've seen soaring crime across the board, and more specifically in terms of larceny, specifically in terms of petty larceny and grand larceny. There is no interest from the state at the state level to confront issues involving cashless bail, and there's a whole list of issues that are the cause of it. We have woke judges and woke DAs. Who are refusing to use their discretion and assist us with the issues involving crime. There was the defund the police movement, and so until and unless these things are addressed, then I don't see that we can change the tide on this.
Either way, good.
Unfortunately, with my own personal experience of going in and out of the Manhattan District Attorney's Office and the Manhattan Criminal Court for the past 4 years, fighting for justice for my son, who was murdered in 2018. And in 2019, bail reform dropped, and one of the defendants was released. Alvin Bragg reduced her murder charge and her gang assault charge down to assault with a shoe and sentenced her to 1 year time served. Another one was sentenced to 7 years. The two brothers, one went to trial and he was sentenced to 20 years, and another one pled guilty, and they continued to postpone it and put it off for the sentencing.
Very
but
difficult.
yeah,
Very difficult.
but the state of crime, I've seen it with my own eyes. Case after case after case. Walk in from out of the street. 7 open warrants. 8 open warrants brought in by detective squad, knock squad, marshals, in cuffs, and let right out. And they walk right out. The judge says, uncuff them and let them go. I'll see you next month.
Terrible. We'll talk more about this.
So the state of crime, from murder to stealing a piece of bubble gum, is out of control.
Sam with a tough act to follow. Right this way.
So it's really interesting because I'm looking from outside of New York into what I see projected through media and projected through what I hear from people on the ground. And from what I hear, and in addition to that, of my sister actually being an NYPD officer. So what I hear on the ground is that it's not good and that their criminals feel emboldened. And I genuinely believe that there should be something done about it. I genuinely believe that there's something that needs to be addressed, whether it's the cashless bail policies or whether it's just leniency on crime in general. So it's something that we're going to have to talk about here.
Over to Jude.
I think it's pretty plain that crime has affected the state of New York tremendously. It affects small businesses. The fact that there's more and more crime, and that's the petty larceny, the small time crimes are not being prosecuted. It just emboldens criminals to go ahead and do the harder stuff, the more violent crimes. This is what the broken windows theory was supposed to prevent, and we've gone away from that. And it's getting to the point where these small time crimes just happen so frequently. You can see it represented in the state of commercial stores. There aren't any small business stores. There are not any Dwayne Reeds. There are not any CVS's. And if there are CVS's, everything's locked up because there's so much petty larceny going. There's so much crime. There's so much theft that's going on. And the moment they get booked, they either they're released or they don't do anything at all. So it's like you're encouraging the wicked to keep doing wicked, and you're not punishing them for their crimes. If somebody, God forbid, somebody tries to do something good to stop these crimes, it seems like the system is it's geared towards punishing the good for for preventing crime. And we're in a society where our sense of morality has broken down, so that we don't really care for the next man. We don't care that he has a person is a merchant who takes the time to invest in the community to buy purchase goods so that he can sell goods to the community. They just disregard that. Criminals disregard that. It's it's a lack of honor and lack of respect for for the next man. So long story, my answer is yes. It is plain obvious that crime has affected, and it is getting progressively worse.
Great answer.
Unfortunately, I got a different spin on things because
Go for it.
I deal with a lot of some of the stores, the chain stores that's been victimized by this here, and I've been in conference calls with some of the how can I say it, the corporates. They have a policy where they're not really enforcing once the police arrest these people, and that's one of the most frustrating things because we see the report of it, right? But some of the chain stores, the corporates, is not they're not prosecuting. And I think that is based off the simple fact, you know, they found a way to get around some of the taxes. It's a loss for them. And the loss prevention that they have allows them not to prosecute, right? And it falls back on society. So I think more or less we have to be more diligent in pushing for as a corporate, because the loss factor that they take, they mark it off. It's a write-off. They found a way to really capitalize off it. And it's at our expense.
That feeds very well into my next question. Let's go to Sam first. Do the police do a good job with leftist woke movements like defund the police? Is it possible for them to do a good job? In what ways are they being held back? And in what ways do they have too much power?
That's a really loaded question.
I know. We're not fooling around here, folks. This is going to be a great night.
No, that's a great question. So there are specific policies that hamstring police and gives them, doesn't allow them to do their full job. There are things like defunding the police, but there's also things like having police, one on parole, one police officer patrolling the streets. That's not enough, especially if you don't have backup. And then that's when you get serious things that happen that paints police in a negative light. So instead of putting themselves in the position, putting themselves in the situation to really just give them bad media coverage and put their face all over the news, they then decide, okay, I'm just going to back off and let crime flourish. And it's not good for communities at all. You're going to have to remind me of some of those other questions.
I think you hit almost all of our points,
Did I?
Sam. Yeah. I think that was good. I think you're good. That was excellent. Let's on to the next.
Well, I'm going to be, just blunt and frank about it. If I was NYPD, I would quit. I wouldn't do that job, period. Okay? Because I don't get, if I was a cop, I wouldn't want to have the fear of getting up, putting on my uniform with the intention of serving the public every morning, all right, with the possibility of me coming home the way I left. The chances are, 50%, 60%? It's no longer like, 95%. Just this morning or yesterday, cop got shot in the arm. In the Bronx. Just the other day, 2 cops stabbed. Okay? We see this stuff happen, on the ground, in the street all the time. There is no regard for NYPD. I can't speak for every other police force because I'm from Suffolk County. All right, and they don't play that shit. Excuse my language, but they don't play that.
I think it's okay to swear. This is the internet.
They don't play that.
I think it's okay.
Okay. They got a district attorney. They got a district attorney out there that's cracking heads. All right. They got Rodney Harrison, who used to be a police commissioner here in New York, that moved out to Suffolk County, and he is like cracking cold cases. Okay, so the difference between NYPD and say, not hypothetical, but Suffolk County Police Department is like night and day.
Great answer.
And that's just because of the administrations.
Yep.
So I'll say a couple. Yeah, I think we do these together.
Yeah, right. Come on. Round of applause, folks. We knew what we were doing.
So I'll make a couple points. It's no secret that among all professions here in New York City, being an NYPD officer is now one profession which receives a lot of poison directed at them, and so there's few professions more vilified than being an NYPD officer here. It's no secret that the level of attrition of police officers is extremely high. It's an extremely frustrating job. And so not only is the environment a very toxic one in terms of the treatment of NYPD police officers.
Let it ring. Let it ring. Let it ring. It can ring. It can ring.
And so just to continue, not only so being a police officer here is very, very frustrating. You can only imagine that in the execution of their own jobs, they arrive at a location, at a retail store, at a supermarket, and they can't even do their job because they're basically hamstrung by DA district attorneys and judges, and they feel that it's not even worth it to pursue things further sometimes.
This is a good question, and I can literally tell you that majority of the problems with police started within de Blasio's administration. Guys like Jamani Williams.
Drop them names.
Well, y'all gonna get me in trouble here. But well, no. I went. Eric Adams just stayed quiet with a lot of things, but you had guys like, no, for real. He stayed quiet with a lot of things, unless it benefited him. Right. But you had guys like Jamani Williams, de Blasio, his administration that literally they catered to protagonists like Al Sharptons and your Hawk Newsoms. Right.
There's a whole industry out there that's pushing this stuff.
Now I can tell you personally, I helped create the NCO program and later on the Build the Block program for the NYPD, right? And that was geared towards reestablishing the relationship between the black communities and NYPD. They frustrated that process. You know what I mean? And when they frustrated...
Why do you think they did that?
To give the appearance and for voting prestige. They played on emotions of the black community who literally they projected was affected predominantly by the interaction with the police, right? When you look at the statistics nationally, you have more whites that's killed by police than you have blacks. Right. But what they do is they play on the emotions by saying per capita, right?
Per capita, right?
And that per capita literally isn't literally math. That's just, something that they put out there to play on the emotions. Bless you. Right? They've utilized that to weaponize what we see today. And majority of them play on this narrative that, nobody's going to say it, but it perpetuates like more of a race bait. Because you have poor whites that look at the fact that blacks are getting benefits, that we should be getting. And it goes back and forth.
I'm learning a lot here.
Literally, we forget the overall agenda by feeding into that narrative. So I would say more or less the police department does have a rough job, right? The parents within the communities, and I tell them all, y'all should come into the communities and see how these parents feel. But they won't.
Is that right?
You know what I mean? A lot of protagonists like Al Sharptons and Hawk Newsom, they had chances to literally build a better relationship, but they chose to capitalize off it financially because they get paid for this.
Who's Hawk Newsom?
Real quick, if you can answer the question real quick.
Hawk Newsom, he's an individual, right, that claims to have the interests of the black community, right? And when I say claim, I mean literally claims. His thing is Black Lives Matter, right? And some of the things that I've said to him in the past was, I need you to come out to the communities and show that Black Lives Matter. Because it can't just be when police is killing us. It has to be when we're out here killing one another. And he hasn't been willing to do that. You see him out in Jamaica, Queens. Oh, you won't see him in the Bronx either. And he lives in the Bronx. You won't see him out there trying to, more or less, intervene on that. You won't see Al Sharpton. I have a problem with Al Sharpton because 2 blocks away from him in Harlem, we have one of the most highest rates of murder that's been unsolved in 1 block.
Interesting stuff, and I want to come back to this more. I think Jude. Good stuff. I think Jude needs to. Good stuff.
I mean, what can I say that hasn't already been said on this panel? Police have an honorable job. The law enforcement is an honorable profession. the administration that we have in place are not making it easy. In fact, they're making it harder to like actually do effective police work, to actually, you know, root out the criminal element that resides within our society. I mean, I can't say no. I can't add to more than what has already been said. But I saw a statistic earlier today that 17 resignations have happened today from the NYPD. 17. You know what I mean? Like, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's just because, you know, they said screw it. You know, I'm done with this. You know, I don't wash my hands of all the nonsense that's going on. And I pretty much, like, I believe that they're handcuffed. But, you know, yeah, it needs to change. Absolutely needs to change. So I'll turn it back over to you, Larry.
Great stuff. Let's go to Sam next. Are some people naturally bad, or does their upbringing and environment lead them to commit crimes? How much should we blame society, and how much should we blame the person?
So, just off the bat, I don't believe that people are inherently bad. If you ever seen a baby, you don't look at them and say, man, that baby gonna murder two people today. Like, you don't think that, right? And so it's undoubtedly, and I might touch on this a little bit more later, but it really is where you come from and who you're around and what kind of environment that your parents or who your guardian allows you to be around. If I have a kid, I'm not going to let my kid run out in the streets because I know what kind of environment that brings. If I raise my kid right and put my kid in the right environment, then my kid can flourish and he won't commit crimes. Point blank, period, right? And what's really important, what does your child do most of their life, most of their development years? Where are your child? Your child's in school, no? That's great. Like, if y'all didn't hear over there, she said, what are you learning in school? That's important. But one thing I want to touch on, just on the crime aspect alone, is who is your child associating with in school, and how much can you control who your kid is associating with in school? And it's a big question. There's a simple answer to that. I think the simple first step has to be you got to choose where your child goes. You need to choose where your child is put so that your child, y'all saying the word.
School choice.
Y'all saying the word. Y'all can say it louder.
School choice.
And so we need to make sure that the parents are empowered to make the best choices for their students. And it's not going to be every parent making the best choice for their students, but it's going to be better than what we have now. It really is. And I understand I was born in New York. I was born in New York, so I understand New York's policy on school choice. We'll get back to it later.
We're going to come back to it, I promise.
All right. I don't think anyone was born a criminal, but criminals commit crime. Killers kill. Rapers rape. Thieves steal. Women beaters beat women. Child abusers abuse children. That's what they do. Instead of them getting up and going to work every day, they get up every day and think about who they're going to rob. Okay? And it starts from little children. The policies that are currently in place are literally creating a whole nother generation of career criminals and mass incarceration. By locking them up, letting them go. Locking them up, letting them go. No consequences. Rewarding them for bad behavior. To go a little bit deeper, it really begins with the breakdown of the nuclear family. It begins and ends with what goes on within the four walls of that home. Now, this is not to take anything away from single mothers, because there's single mothers that are really out there doing their thing. I'm a product of one. 7 by herself. All right? And all of us turned out to be pretty doggone good.
I agree.
All right? But it begins and ends within the 4 walls of the home and the breakdown of the nuclear family.
Great answer.
So I guess I'll address that question by first pointing out that I believe that people are inherently good. And so there is a role that society plays in shaping that individual and in determining what their actions are in a greater society. So the first point would be consequences. If you remove consequences from a person's misconduct, then they in essence are incentivized to continue that misconduct. So that's why it's important that there be consequences should there be stealing, should there be theft. The consequences should be escalated if there's violence together with that theft. And so we're seeing this largely in, for example, more recently in the bodega and supermarket context, where it's not enough that an individual has to go in and steal. Sometimes they're confronted, they're approached, and then it actually escalates into a violent situation. And so that's actually what the bodegas and supermarkets, for example, they want to address in changes to legislation, that there needs to be a specific component where theft is coupled with violence, where the consequence, the felony, the degree of felony is elevated, so that there's mandatory jail time, and that's very significant.
If y'all don't mind, I'm gonna give you a true story here. Right? I'm a father of two boys, 33 this year, 21. When my 21-year-old was young, right, we used to read to him, educate him. He had to literally 3 hours worth of news, read the newspaper, current events. So he was smarter. He was much advanced. When he started school, I remember in 3rd grade, right, he got suspended. Right? Now, he got suspended because kids in his class was cursing. I got upset with him because I said, there's no way that a teacher's going to lie about you being suspended for cursing. If I find out you was cursing, and these exact words, I'm going to fuck you up. Because I send you to school to learn. So, exactly how we talk.
That's what I needed to hear.
Right? So, we go to school. Right? The parents is there. All of us are there. The teacher says, Saquon wasn't cursing. The other kids was cursing. But it was as a result because Saquon is more advanced than the kids. He's, as they define him, an educational bully. Because he knows how to use words. He knows how to put words together.
Powerful tool.
So all of us, all the parents looked at it and was like, well, so why is he suspended if he didn't curse? And my expression was like, why the fuck is he suspended if he wasn't cursing? So he said, no, because, he's more educated than these kids, and that's why. That's not my fault if they didn't, ingrain this in their children.
Fathers definitely make a difference.
You know what I'm saying? So, long story short, my son, college, he's literally, this is last year. He's in Spain now.
Lucky guy.
Abroad. But it plays to the point of how you raise your child. If you don't allow the environment to dictate the circumstances. So literally, it plays a part of your social environment which dictates the outcome.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Wow. Absolutely. Parents matter. All parents matter.
But lack of a father is the number one variable in determining or influencing who ends up incarcerated.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I do. I mean, I kind of take a different viewpoint. I believe, growing up in the church, growing up raised in the Bible, I believe that, we all, man's heart is twisted. You know what I mean? That's why we need, a knowledge of God so that you keep us in check. Like a sense of morality. And I think that's what I alluded to earlier. why we have such explosion of crime is because we're not acknowledging God, we're not acknowledging morals, we have a breakdown morality, we're not respecting our common man. We don't fear God, so we don't respect man. We're all created by God. So that's like, to answer your question, I believe that you teach a child in the way they should go, they won't depart from it. And that goes to your point about having a mother and father, to teach you up, to raise you right, so that you're not wilding out on the streets, because you don't have no sense of structure. You don't know any better. So I think that's part of the reason why we have such an explosion of crime, because we have a breakdown in nuclear families. We have a lot of single parent households, and raising, I'm not a dad yet, but raising a child is tough in its own, and you need two parents just to keep a check on your child. I mean, growing up, I was fortunate to have both my mom and my dad in the picture, and my dad's from Nigeria, and he whooped my ass. He whooped my ass when I got out of line, and that
I'm Irish. I got my ass whooped.
Yeah, exactly. But that put the fear of God in me, and I'm not trying to disappoint him. I'm not trying to disappoint my mom. So I'm going to try to be respectful, even though I was a knucklehead growing up. I didn't do everything I should have done right, but that presence in my life, helped raise me, and I'm just thankful to God every day for the presence of my dad and my mom in my life, because God knows where I'll be right now. So I think that goes to the point of having a nuclear family, like Madeline said, that helps raise these children up, because these children are going to be what's the old adage, the philosophy of the classroom is going to be the philosophy of the government in a couple of years. You know what I mean? So we have to try to encourage these family units that are intact, mom and dad, so that they can raise these young ones up right, because right now we're just having, I'm sorry to say, a whole bunch of knuckleheads coming up, because they don't know better. They don't know no better, and they look to their peers to find out what's better, and they think they're doing right, but they're living the fast life, and that life is not going to enable them to live a good life, good long life, until where they can raise kids, and their children can raise their children and all that. You know what I mean? So that's where I'm coming from with that.
Great stuff. I know I said 10 questions, but the panel has a lot to say, so I'm going to throw out some of the junk. I think we're going to do 8. Is carrying a firearm a good way to stay safe? Why or why not?
I'm not going to answer this by telling y'all. I'm going to answer this in a different way. You're walking up to somebody, and someone has a gun, doesn't have a gun on their hip. If you were feeling really distressed that day, really angry that day, and you weren't thinking right, and you took it out on somebody, which one are you going to take it out on first? So the gun has a deterring effect to people around you. And it's the reason why it's encouraged that women carry pepper spray. It's the same reason. If you have a defense weapon, you can use the defense weapon just to defend yourself. Period. I'm not going to say much more on that.
A gun is an inanimate object without the mindset behind the trigger. So the gun doesn't just automatically pick itself up, point it at somebody, and fire it. It has to be a person with the intent to shoot someone for that gun to even be effective. My son, Sergeant Hassan Korea, all right, the one who was stabbed to death, Afghanistan War retired veteran, heavy artillery specialist, an expert in weaponry, can take apart a firearm and put it back together in 30 seconds blindfolded. He had a gun that night, a licensed and registered firearm. He put it down before he stepped to this group of people because he didn't have the intent to use a gun. He was going there to resolve a situation. He did not know that these were a bunch of homicidal maniac savages, okay, that he was going to defuse the situation. Plus, Hassan is an expert. He's a boxer. He boxed Golden Gloves with Felix Trinidad in Puerto Rico. He was also a personal physical trainer at Crunch Gym on the speed bag and the heavy bag. And what is it, the PX90, that extreme workout stuff? All right, P90X, and a nutritionist. So he was in 100% tip-top shape. So if he had to use anything, his hands. And that's what he did. He put the gun down, okay? And this is all on video. And the detectives, for the life of them, cannot understand, with all of my son's military training, why he put that gun down. Because he didn't have the intent on using the gun. That's why. It was completely useless. Don't you know that this Manhattan District Attorney's Office used that gun, all right, as a way of saying that these people stabbed my son to death and gang assaulted him because of that gun? That the gun was a threat? They didn't even know he had the gun. No one saw the gun. But in New York, all right, guns are lethal, illegal firearms for legal gun owners, okay? Not for illegal gun owners. You can shoot anybody you want, okay, and walk right out the court. But have a license and be registered to carry. They will lock you up. They'll make you seem like you are the criminal. Hassan owned 3 guns. There's nothing wrong with being a responsible, licensed, and registered gun owner. Lots of people own guns. But if you're not responsible, you have no business with it. Period. It's not the gun. I'll say it again. The gun is an inanimate object without the mindset behind the trigger.
So I agree a lot with what Madeline said. And so in New York is an interesting place. And so here in New York, a person's right to self-defense is under attack. And I think that last year we saw that very clearly in several ways. And so, for example, we had an interesting incident in the Hispanic community with a bodega clerk, Jose Alba. Who that case was a self-defense case where a knife was used, but it served as the key example of how New York went out of its way with DA Alvin Bragg to basically, they put this poor man in jail. He defended himself, and he was put in jail. And immediately when Alvin Bragg took office, they set out to undermine a person's right to self-defense. And so, but, luckily, and, thank God, the Second Amendment exists. And we also had a group of courageous, business leaders in the community stand up to Alvin Bragg. And I was happy to be, to observe that, to participate in it. And some folks actually in this room are familiar with that as well. And it took actually an alliance between the bodegas, the supermarkets, even Lee Zeldin came into the picture and put some real legal muscle and political muscle behind it. And, leaders within New York City stood up to New York, stood up to Alvin Bragg, and they explained the position that a person has a right to self-defense. And this state continues to attempt to undermine a person's right to self-defense. It even took the Supreme Court of the United States to overturn a lot of the laws here, a lot of the process to obtain a permit, and that's still that's still changing each year here in New York. So to summarize, I think that self-defense is my main issue, my main concern with the use of guns, my main interest in guns. A person should always maintain a right to self-defense.
Can you repeat that question?
Absolutely. In 10 seconds. Is carrying a firearm a good way to stay safe? Why or why not?
Second Amendment says you're supposed to be able to carry a weapon. So I think, you know, you should not want to, you know, try and suppress somebody's right to carry. And as we've always seen, you know, somebody with a gun and somebody with a knife is not a good fight.
I wish my son had to put that gun down that night.
Me too.
Repeat that question one more time.
Absolutely. Is carrying a firearm a good way to stay safe? Why or why not?
I mean, 100%. I mean, as you know, the Second Amendment exists because it codifies the law of nature. You know, you see animals able to defend themselves from, you know, all types of, you know, would-be predators and prey. So why not human beings? I think that's just codifying the law of nature. We have the right to self-defense. Every human being has the right to self-defense. You know, and a gun is the ultimate right to, you know, protect yourself against, you know, would-be elements, criminal elements that want to, you know, deprive you of your liberty, deprive you of your goods. So absolutely, it's as long as the person's trained, you know, it is a proper way. Every American citizen should be armed and, you know, quite frankly, dangerous. So, you know, that would be a great deterrent, you know, for against crime, against the criminal element, to be prepared and ready to use your firearm when necessary. So.
Next question. Is there any illegal behavior here that you think should be legal?
That's already legal. I think there are two things. First is having the right to own and bear a firearm in New York City. And like one of the fellow panelists here already spoke about, New York is making it harder, even though their law was already struck down. They actually reintroduced the law and just dared the Supreme Court to strike it down again. So currently it's illegal to hold a firearm in specific cases, although I think in those specific cases it should be legal. And then the second one really is a right to self-defense, like the same panelist said earlier, is you technically have a right to self-defense, but it's what happens after you defend yourself. Are you going to be persecuted? There's so many stories about people who defended themselves with a gun that they legally owned, but now they're being prosecuted for the use of that gun. And if on the back end, you're being penalized for using the right that you are granted, that you have inherently, then I don't see how you can technically call it legal. So those are the two things that I think that should be legal.
I wish it was legal to sue Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg. And also New York State Governor Kathy Hochul. I wish that I had the legal right to sue the blood out of them, because I sure would if I could.
I'll comment on one thing that has come up on my radar recently as a trend that I think should be opened up and should be made legal. And so I recently read an interesting report from the Alliance of Bodega and Supermarket Owners that I mentioned, and it had an interesting point that talked about the rise of private security. Number one, the rise of private security. And so at a minimum, if New York is going to raise issues and attempt to deny a person from exercising their right to self-defense, number one, they should allow self-defense. But if they're going to make an issue out of it, there needs to be a solution. And what we're seeing now is the rise of private security. And so what we're seeing is retail stores having private security. We're actually also seeing the rise of a program where NYPD officers, when they're off the clock, they actually work as private security. Okay. And so things like, we need to encourage and welcome these kinds of things. We definitely need self-defense, but then we should also open the door to private security, where a lot of these stores, they need it, or otherwise they can't operate.
You said some of the things that's illegal.
Yep, something that's illegal now, should it be legal? You don't have to get anything.
Let's go with morals and common sense. Because so far they've banned that.
Look at the schools. Look at those schools.
Look at the school system. Look at how they're, endangering the moral of a child with, a lot of this, sexual preferences. I would keep it there. They've literally outlawed and made it illegal to have common sense and morals. So that's what I think should be legal.
Great answer.
Repeat that question again.
Is there any illegal behavior here that you think should be legal here in New York?
Well, here in New York, absolutely. We all talked about it, self-defense. Everybody should be equipped to handle a gun or handle some type of firearm to prevent, your liberty being taken away from a would-be criminal. You don't want to have that happen, and I think everybody should be trained, and they should not make it illegal for you to be trained to hold a firearm, to hold a weapon, or what have you. Everybody needs to have a threat element, per se. Somebody, Sam said earlier, would you pick a fight with a person with a gun or without a gun? The element of a threat makes you have respect. What does it say? Healthy, strong fences make healthy neighbors, or something to that effect. If you have that effect of a threat, then people will be less inclined to mess around with you and to try any shenanigans against you. So I think that's something that should be made legalized. Let's roll it back. Let's get back to our original roots where we had a Second Amendment place, and we can definitely use it to our full authority. I mean, these gun control laws are inherently racist. So like, we can go on that, but but we only have 8 minutes, so.
Well, I think we got 15. We'll give it a few. We'll give it a few extra. We started a little late. So, do you think the world will be safer or more dangerous in the future? What does the future of New York City look like? Is everyone going to leave? Or are they going to come back? What role does crime play in making people leave the city? 1 minute. 1 minute.
You can never.
Fast.
I like to say you can never predict the future, so we actually don't know what's going to happen. However, what we can say is that things might look bleak and things might look bad now, but things also looked bleak and bad in the 80s. I know most of us aren't old enough to remember what the 80s in New York City was like, but if you speak to old people, old heads who lived through that...
Sam! You were doing good. You were on good behavior. Points off.
Hey.
He's a baby. Come on.
All I'm saying... Hold up. All I'm saying is that everybody in this room looks young and beautiful. That's all I'm saying.
Saved it. He saved it. He learned from the best here, folks.
But essentially, what I'm saying is that those...
We're all
if you
learning
speak to
here.
the wiser among us who've lived through the 80s, and
I was there, I don't
in
remember.
particular the 80s in New York, they can tell you that things felt hopeless then. I've spoke to many of them. They've all said things felt hopeless in the 80s. But they didn't feel hopeless in the 90s. They didn't feel hopeless in the early 2000s, kind of. I lived in the Bronx in the early 2000s, a little bit. But it didn't really feel like that. So things can get better. And I know we're at a down point right now, but it's always greener. Grass is always greener on the other side. Maybe it really is greener on the other side.
Well, if you've been around for 60 years like I have, okay,
You're never going to live that down, Sam.
and if you actually lived through and survived the crack era of the 80s, okay, yes, things were bad during the 80s. And if you've been around for 6 decades, life is cycles. It goes in cycles, up and down. When the Republicans are in office, things are good, law and order, things are evolving. A lot of people kicking and screaming, don't like it, but they are living better. The quality of life was better. When the Democrats are in office, they come in there, they steal all our damn money, okay? The crime goes out the roof, okay? People are homeless. You see what's happening now. So
The future.
it's cycles. It's cycles, until we get some candidates in there, some elected officials in there who Republicans or conservatives or whatever, all right, and we start to restore God, family, and country, okay? And that cycle is going to continue. But we only have a few more years, okay? And it'll be a turnover, it'll be a turnover in the next election cycle because people are going to start to wake up, all right? People are getting tired of the mess. I voted Democrat for 40 years of my life. I didn't vote Republican until I voted for Trump in 2020. All right? And I just, changed political affiliation in this last gubernatorial election cycle and during the primaries because I wanted to vote for Andrew Giuliani. He didn't win and Lee Zeldin won, so I changed to conservative. But I stand here today as a proud black conservative, right? Call me Miss White Supremacist, okay, if that's what you want to call me, all right? But anyway, yeah, things go in cycles, all right? And until law and order is restored, okay, things are going to continue on a downward spiral.
Larry, can you repeat the question?
Absolutely. Do you think the future of the world will be safer or more dangerous? What does the future of NYC look like? Is everyone going to leave or are they going to come back? What role does crime play in making people leave the city?
Yeah, okay. So my opinion is that we can't predict the future, but we can do the next best thing. We can look at trends. And so in terms of trends here in New York City, it is undisputed that black and Hispanic voters are shifting Republican. And a lot of that has to do with the emphasis being placed on law and order. And I think that, a lot of the crime that's happening, we see it in our own neighborhoods. And so it really hits us different than it does everyone else. We see it very clearly. And even in last year's race for governor, we saw the trends very clearly where, districts that were incredibly as dark blue as possible are now, at best, moderately light blue. And we're seeing shifts across, many districts here in New York City, moving from, Democrat to Republican. And we're seeing some that are now majority Republican. And I think that the Democrat Party knows this. They see the trends happening. And what we see now is an attempt, which is very late and it is insufficient. We see the Democratic Party, we see Mayor Adams essentially scrambling to create some kind of task force to address the issues. He's more vocal about it, but the problem is that it doesn't really matter what Adams believes. He is blocked. He is blocked by at the state legislature level. He is blocked by a state assembly. He's blocked by a state senate, which is supermajority progressive. Okay, so that's the problem. He has some degree of power limited to New York City, but he can't execute as well as he would like at the legislative level. So the Democratic Party, they see what's going on, and they see the votes shifting away from them and away from their woke ideologies. And so my position is that soon enough we'll see the Republicans become a majority and break 50% when it comes to, our communities, and hopefully we can, turn the tide on this sad state of affairs.
Unfortunately, we're all collateral damage until then. We're all collateral damage until then.
No time like the present.
Let me say this. I want to run some stats by people first, right? 30 years ago, we had 527,257 crime complaints, right? That's 30 years ago. As of last year, we've had 95,273 crimes reported. They've got us focused on crime where we're literally missing what's going on. Taxes, property taxes went up because if you look at the salaries of some of these elected officials, it went from 50,000 to 100-something thousand, right? They've taxed the hell out of us, and many people are leaving just on the simple fact of that. You have a high tax rate criminally. Like, we overlook that criminally. They tax us. If you look at your paycheck, you're paying New York City taxes now. You're paying the state, city, and federal. They're taxing the hell out of us, but they've literally left us without an economic plan. So they tax the hell out of us, and then the first thing they put out there is crime is up. Right? Crime statistically is down. But the media plays it to the point where we forget about the real issues. Our taxes. They make it hard for the cost of living. I live in Harlem, right? You have to make at least $73,000 live in Harlem. You know what I'm saying? And in the Bronx, where the annual median is $41,000, now you got, affordable housing for $60,000. How do you actually live through that, knowing that your elected officials are robbing you? And it's cool because what they've done was cement us with so much fear that we've overlooked that. And that's why I said, it's illegal to have common sense. We should have common sense put in, in the politics, because voter turnout is low. You got people that vote down the line. They don't know the issues, right? They don't even know what the position that these people are running and what they do, right? And we literally get frustrated. So when you start looking at what's going on, common sense. And the biggest crooks has been, the party has been leading. To answer your question, Eric Adams doesn't have a plan. He doesn't. I've sat with him. We spoke it, and I've become frustrated. I've literally got tired of playing nice with this administration, because usually I just put them in the news and let them figure it out for themselves. Oh, he loves the party.
They have a task force at best.
Wait, whoa! What tax force? You talking about? No. Like,
We're running out of time. Let's go to Jude.
okay.
Let's go to Jude. Good stuff. Good stuff. We can keep the conversation going after. Great stuff.
This is good.
Pay taxes. 100% there with you, my friend. Don't want to pay those taxes.
This is good. This is good.
Jude,
Oh man.
what's the future look like?
Yeah. I think it's not going to get better. But you know what? Here's the thing. We're here for a reason. I feel like we're gathered here to talk about these issues because they affect us on a personal level. And I think we're not here by chance. We're here at this place at this time for a reason to make a change. I think we're divinely appointed to we see the problems come that surround us as a society. So for that reason, we're here to make a change. And I think the future is bright, for all of us. If we get focused, don't worry about the misdirection like Alpheus was talking about, with the tax crime and all that. We have to stay focused and continue to push forward. And I think the future is bright for everybody. We have a bright future ahead of us. Even though the world's getting worse, we have a bright future. So we stay focused, keep turn over New York City. Turn New York City maybe red. Hopefully within the next couple of years. But it's gonna be a long way, long march through the institution. So I think the future is bright for us.
What a beautiful answer. I'm going to keep the mic with you in one sentence. Last one, I promise.
Last one. I hope so.
Last one. What's the one big thing you would do to stop crime in the city?
Oh my goodness, one big thing that I would do. Well, this is going to be a panel answer. Punish the criminals and reward the good people for doing good.
Fair enough. One sentence. One sentence.
That's one start.
Address the root cause of it.
That's a good question. That is a good one, actually. Bring back common sense. I have to agree with that.
Good
That
answer.
goes across the board.
Good answer.
Lock them up.
Sam. Last to Sam.
Everything everyone said on the panel, comma, and put schools in the choice of the parents choosing.
Great stuff. Folks, I'd like to thank our panel. We are out of time. We can have some questions if we want. I mean, real quick, some questions. Guys, are we up for some questions? Or are we all right? All right, let's do some Q&A. Right there. Right there.
Hi. First of all, hi everyone.
Hello.
Ma'am, my condolences for your loss.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Young man, you have a lot to learn. One of the things that you said was about parenting and how someone else said everyone's inherently good. That is just not true. Everyone is not inherently good. And we need to realize that. There's such a thing as biology. Neurology exists. Everyone is not born good. The reason that a child looks wonderful is because the child has not matured. When that brain matures, you will see who you're dealing with. By then, it's too late. You can raise your own child to be a good person.
Question.
Thank you so much. You've been a great host.
Thank you.
You can raise your own child to be an upstanding citizen, but if your child cannot defend themselves in the real world against people who are coming against them, they won't make it. So that is one point that we spoke about here that I think is extremely important. Right now, the laws have changed in New York City about carrying guns. Arm yourself. If you don't know how to use a weapon, learn. Go to the range. Go with someone who already knows. Do whatever you have to do.
I think the question's on
And arm
firearms.
yourself. My question is, thank you so much to our patient host. Isn't he lovely? Can we get a round of applause for him?
Hey, I love Larry.
My question is, would you rather be judged by 12 or be carried by 6? That's my question.
Good question. Good question. Does anyone have an answer?
I like to be alive.
There we go. There we go. Next up, guy in the black.
Thank you for the panel. 10 out of 10. Thank you. It was excellent. I have a question. I can't speak to New York politics like you guys can because I'm new here, but I'm from Philadelphia. And you guys complain about Bragg, if you know Krasner, if you know Bristol McLeod. That's right. So last year, the year before last year, we hit 500 homicides. This year wasn't that far off. And I think one thing that doesn't get addressed enough is like the heartbeat of our culture. What I mean by that is I would argue for the young generation, including me, it's cool to be violent. Yes. You know what I mean? Like, yes. It's cool to be violent. Like when I was coming up to high school, fighting, all that stuff, it gets praised, right? And you guys were talking about influence, what's influencing our kids. I would argue, even if you raise your kids up good, when you turn on music, when you look at our athletes, it's I'm gonna shoot this, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that, right? And earlier you talked about savages, what happened, and it's crazy you said that word because if you turn on 50% of our songs today,
Savage.
you're gonna hear savage this, savage that, right? So my question is how do we change the momentum for that influence of our youth?
Yes.
Like I said, as of right now, it's cool to be violent.
Great.
Right?
This is a great question.
I would argue that's like one of the biggest poisons.
Yeah. How do we fix the culture, right? And
Can I answer?
yeah, yes. And then I want Jude and Sam to answer this, right? Talk about your religious lives a little bit. You hit on this earlier.
When I say cool, I mean like that's what gets you the clout. That's what gets you the popularity. Right? So if that's what's happening, right? Why would our kids not turn to that kind of lifestyle? And I don't see enough leaders speaking against that. That's a fact. So thank you again, and that's my question.
Well,
That's a fact.
my quick answer would be is I have a 20-year-old. He just graduated high school. Very easily could have fallen in, okay? And he spoke, he talked because I asked him a question similar to that. My son went to the Army, okay, instead of, going to the street. And now he jumps out of perfectly good moving airplanes for a living. He's a paratrooper.
pretty cool.
He's 82nd Airborne, okay? 20 years old, okay? And my answer would be, if the kids want to pick up guns, they like playing with guns, put on a uniform. All right, learn how to use it, train, okay, properly, get paid, and go to the military and earn some real badges of honor. Earn their wings, earn their stripes, earn their blue cord, and do some real cool shit. Okay, and if you want to die a hero and not a zero.
That's a fact.
Sam,
Do you want to answer this question or take another one?
let's do the culture question real quick.
I guess real quick on the culture.
Talk
like
about
I
your
s-
faith, man.
about my faith. I'd love to talk about my faith, but I feel like this question is in particular to a different aspect of my life is, like I said, I was born in the Bronx. I went to school in the Bronx. And what I noticed was that if you were to compare me to another kid 3 houses down from where I lived, same community, same situation, single mom, a lot of sisters, everything. We both consumed the same exact media. We listened to the same songs and everything. What was different? I was put into an environment that said these are songs that speak about people, but you shouldn't emulate these things.
Yeah.
He grew up in an environment that said this is songs that speak about people, and these are your people, and it's exactly how your people acts. And that's the difference. I went to a school 17 blocks away exactly. We walked it. I had to take a bus sometimes. He went to a school down the street. That was the difference between us two. That was the difference between me and my sisters who got out of the hood and him and his family. And God bless his family, but he was stabbed. I wasn't. Someone in his family else locked up. That's that simple. Teach your kids like this is not it, and put them in an environment where their school teachers don't do it. When they're around, when the teachers hear things like that, they shut it down immediately. That's how it is.
Sam, what's that called?
It's called school choice.
Thank you. Thank you.
2 more questions.
Yeah, let's go to the young woman in the black. But you can go first.
Well, who's the black jeans or black?
Oh boy, you black jeans are closer.
Well,
I can't
first
say
of all,
that.
I can't claim the credit of being from the Bronx or Brooklyn, from Manhattan. I'm sorry, I'm boring. I went to school at home though. But I wanted to speak on the economic issues, most specifically, because I know we touched on it briefly. I know we touched on culture. I know we touched on religion. I know we touched on our upbringing. But how can we bring to light a lot of the economic issues? I know I spoke to some of this panel briefly about economic issues. How do we, how do we improve our credit? How do we make good decisions with our money? I work at a bank, so I help people, with savings accounts and 401ks, IRAs, that sort of thing. So how do we improve the condition, the economic condition of Black America to what it once was in the 40s and in the 50s, where we had great credit, we had better spending habits. We bought a house, we bought a home, we invested in ourselves. Now we're investing in goods where we look good for people, but our pockets ain't looking good. How do we improve that economic condition?
Well, Alfie, you already have the mic, so I think this is going to be you.
Turn the TV and the radio off and pick up a book. Majority of us, and this is to go to your question as well, we believe what we see, and we don't understand that's entertainment. We have been conditioned to literally believe that that's a reality. And the hard part about it is what she's saying right now. We've lost focus on the main agendas: credit, economics. We've lost that. We're spending more money than what we make, and that's what we wind up seeing in the COVID, right? We have the woke generation, right? The woke movement that's running around talking about food insecurity. and mental health. It's just poverty.
Fair enough. Fair
It's
enough.
poverty.
Just pour, damn it.
If you don't have any money and your bills is backed up, right? You trying to figure out how you gonna get the money to pay your bills. So you stressed out. That's a mental health. So, let's call it what it is. You broke.
Great answer. Great answer. Last question to the deputy vice chair of the caucus. Save the best for the class. Best for last. Last question.
For city council.
Yeah, let's hold the mic.
Oh, the mic? Hello, he's holding the mic for me. So I just wanted to come up here and just because a lot of everyone just touched on as far as what we're doing for the community and how we're trying to help crime and everything. And I wholeheartedly believe that in order to, I guess, negate the numbers on the crime, we need to start with the youth. Oh. We need to start with the youth. When I was growing up, so I went to private schools, I went to schools on Long Island, and I went to Catholic schools, and I went to public school. So I went through a lot. My parents really tried really hard to give me a great education, but it's expensive. It's not cheap. So I learned going to schools on Long Island. I'm learning Spanish in the first grade. First and second grade, my teacher's speaking straight Spanish. Then I'm going to private school for junior high school, and I'm learning about stocks, about how to trade, about to invest my money, and then I get into public school, and I feel like I'm being dumbed down. A lot of my extracurricular activities that I was doing in junior high school and my freshman year of high school I couldn't do them anymore because the times didn't permit. I'm going to school at 10 o'clock in the afternoon and getting out at 5. So I can't do my cheerleading that I was doing. I can't do any of the other extracurricular activities that I was doing after school that finished at 4 or 5 o'clock. So my thing is, in order to keep, because that kept a lot of us off the streets growing up in my neighborhood. We would all get together and go to cheerleading practice, go to football practice, go to the basketball game, go to these things. But there's nothing to do at 5 o'clock. What you gonna do besides fight? And when I'm going to public school, I seen a lot of that. And I got into a lot of situations I should not have gotten into. But I'm here, and I don't have a choice. I get out of school at 5 o'clock. These people are messing with me. I walk away no matter how hard I try, but they keep coming. And there's nothing you can do. No matter how hard you keep trying to walk away from it, you can't. So you're just forced into these situations. So there's nothing left for that crowd after 5.
Yeah, so what advice would you have for children?
We need to have more extracurricular activities that include better PSAL for our sports, for our kids, for our kids, women's, after 5 o'clock. Give us something that's until 10, 11 o'clock. These parents are working. Not everybody does not work a 9 to 5. Everybody does not do that. So when you're leaving your kids at the end of the day with nothing to do. And what they're going to do, go outside and get busy and do something they're not supposed to. So give us something at the end of the day to do. So I think we should do that. How can we do that?
Yep. How can we do that?
Yes,
There we
yes.
go. It's a question. It's a question. There we go. It's a question. I'm happy. The host is happy. The host is happy.
Right, thank you.
I need you on my team.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where you from?
I'm from Queens, Southside Jamaica, Queens.
Oh,
Born and raised.
Running for city council.
I am.
yeah.
Yeah.
District 32.
Okay. A lot of people don't see, like, over the last 30 years, they've taken a lot of those programs out of the communities. They found a way to incentive.
Why?
For money purposes.
Money.
The crime,
Right.
the crime things.
No, I mean, I have young girls in my community, right? We had an event where it was double Dutch, and they was looking at it like it was foreign. They didn't know what it was. That shows you that despite the drop in crime, we've been so conditioned for fear that we don't allow the social interaction, right? I have a problem with the PAL. The PAL literally monetizes.
There you go.
And
What's the PAL?
Explain that real quick.
Police Athletic League, right? I have both AJ as well as the Police Foundation that funds them. And they explicitly stated we don't give them our money to be charging people. So they found a way to monetize and have you pay for services that they're already getting the money for. There's no real accountability there. And that's the problem that we have. And our kids suffer.
That's what it's
Our
about.
community suffer. So if we don't have good community leaders that really understand what it is they're supposed to do and what they're not supposed to do, then that same question you asked, we continue that cycle. So we need more leaders.
All right, folks, that's it for the night. Thank you so much. Big round of applause for our panel. Thank you so much. The proud partners, thank you. Thank you, thank you. And thank you for being a wonderful crowd. Everybody have a great night. Take care.
Oh my God.
Let me get one more group picture
Yeah, we
before y'all run off.
My 60-year-old legs.
All right, squeeze in. Everybody squeeze in.
It was not meant to be. We'll clean it up in just a second.
3, 2, 1. Look, this way.
My bad.
Thank you, folks. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.
Hey, how you doing? How you doing? Nice to meet you. How you doing today? How'd everything?